Hi gang, welcome back. I like pineapples. I wanted to see if I could make one using the half hexi ruler. This is what I came up with, so grab your rulers and let's get started. Alright, so instead of grabbing graph paper, I went and grabbed my dry erase board. I don't want a Sharpie, I want my dry erase marker. Alright, so I'm going to start with the bottom, and this half hexi will be my base. Okay, then let's try to draw some straight lines. So this half hexi height finished is 2 inches, so I'm going to try, let's see, 1, 2, let's times it by 3, so let's go 6 inches up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's the same on the other side. Now I know from past experience that I can use a dry erase on these templates. And rulers, they do just erase. If you are going to use dry erase markers, I would test a corner to make sure that they're not going to stain your rulers, but these work really well with the dry erase board. Okay, so if I have that looks a little high if I'm going to put that on. I got a skinny pineapple, but let's make him a little bit shorter. So I'm going to say, let's try 4 inches. No, let's try 5. Let's flip this over. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Just going to erase that. And then put that on there. That does look a little bit better. So I like that height. So 1, 2, and I'm not worrying about this being perfect. I am going to take the seam allowance off on the bottom. Otherwise it is going to distort my drawing just a little bit. But I'm not worried about this being perfect. This is just what I'm going to follow to lay out my block. I'm going to turn this one upside down. And I'm going to grab, oops. Grab this, go across, and then on the top I was going to do 2 half square triangles. This is 5 inches, so let's just go up. I think 2 inches is good height. We'll start with that and see how that works. There's my 2 inches. And if this is 5 inches, I want to go in 1 inch from each side. I'm just going to use this to draw straight up. Oops. One in the middle. Ooh, that is way off, but let's just not use my finger. And I want a little pointy one going this way and a pointy one going that way. So looking at this, I still think it's a little bit tall, so I'm going to, because there's more drawing on the top, I'm going to erase the bottom. Let's try making these 4 inches tall instead of 5. Up to 4. And again, this is, if we were doing this on graph paper, we'd be erasing a lot. So let's try 4 inches. You know what? I can just do it this way. This ruler that I'm using is also a Missouri Star product. It is 5 inches by 15 inches. So it does work great for pre-cuts, up to 10 inches, cutting them in half and diagonals and everything. It's just that's one of my primary rulers. So if I do this, there we go. I think that looks a little bit more proportioned as far as the pineapple goes. If you want to do it 5 inches, you want a tall skinny pineapple, you can do that. This is just to stir some creative juices to try something different. So now what I'm going to do is I have my block laid out, and I'm going to block it out like I would do how I'm going to actually sew it. So we're kind of working backwards. We have the final block. Now we need to figure out how we're going to sew it. So what I would do is I would sew this, make a strip here. And again, these don't have to be perfect. We're just using this to get measurements and to use as a guide for when we do the block. Alright, now let's figure out how big we need it. So this, we said, was 4 inches high. The hexagon is 5 inches, so this is 5 inches. So I need a yellow piece, 5 by 4 inches. This will be a half hexi. Yellow. Oh, you know what? Let's draw a line here because I am going to need a bottom strip. So I don't forget that, and the one up here as well. Okay, half hexi. This is going to be another half hexi. Yellow. This is a half hexi. Green. And these will be half square triangles. So for the half square triangles, I want them to end up to be 2 inches by 2 inches. Now down below in the description box I'll put a link. I found a download that you can work backwards from. So if I need 2-inch squares, finished size, I can go onto this spreadsheet and look at it and work my way back to figure out what size squares I need to cut. And it's great because it does all three. So if you want to do a diagonal and get 2 pieces, or you can do the crisscross and get 4 pieces, or do the magic 8 cutting for creating half square triangles, it's all on one sheet. It's great, it's convenient. I have it printed out, and it's just something great to have when you're freestyling, so you can back into half square triangles. So I will have to look that up because I'm not sure exactly what that measurement is. Okay, so now to do our strips, this is going to be a 2.5-inch strip. This is also a 2.5-inch strip. This is going to be a 4-inch strip. And this will be a 2.5-inch strip. And that should, I am going to need, these are going to be backgrounds, and these are going to be green. This is background, and this is going to be green. So whatever the measurement comes to back into these 2 half square triangles, I'm going to need a rectangle of background and I'm sorry, not a rectangle. I'm going to need a square of the background and a square of the green. So it looks like I have everything laid out. I'm going to get this material cut and I will be back. Everything. So let's take a look. And it looks pretty good. Here is the pattern we drew out. there is everything that's cut. I haven't sewn anything together yet. I just wanted to lay it back out. You should always lay it back out as you go, because sometimes you'll learn, sometimes things don't line up and you might have a little bit of problem with your math, or this may have been too long or too short, and then you can make the adjustment now versus getting to ending with a block that you really don't like. So let's work on this row by row. So the first thing is I'm going to take, and I need one, I'm going to work on the left side of everything. So I need something that joins up like that. So I'm just going to cut this angle for this block. Alright, so I can sew those two together. That one is done. And this one I can sew these two together. Alright. And on this one I need an angle that goes the opposite direction. I need one that goes this way on this. Alright, those two can be sewn together. And for this one, looks like I got a piece left over. This is my third background that I picked out. I laid them all out. Didn't like how the white looked that I had. Grabbed a gray, and then I went with this blue finally. I don't know, just didn't hit my color senses right today. So this one will lay like this. So my template needs to go this way to get a seam that will line up. Alright, that gives me something to do with that row. And our last row, we need to draw a line corner to corner. Now I did look at my chart and it said that a 2 7/8 inch square would give me the right size that I was looking for. Okay, where'd my pen go? Oh, there it is. So once, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line down the middle. So 1/4 of an inch on each side, cut down the line, and square my 2 half square triangles up to 2 inches. Alright, stack these two together, and that is what I will sew for that row. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows that we should be working with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. Okay, I'm going to go sew these together like I've showed you here, and I will be right back. Right, so I have all of my other pieces done. I'm just going to square up my corners here. Now I know a lot of people keep them folded and square them up. I don't have a lot of success with that. It doesn't visually work for me. So I'm going to do it the way that I normally do it, which is to set up the 45 here, and I need these to be 2 inches. And all I do, here's my 2-inch line, is make sure that I have material on this side of the line. That's it for this first cut. So I line up this diagonal on my diagonal, cut them, and yes, you can do 2 at a time, 2 sides at a time. Okay, now is when I really line it up. So I have, this is a 90-degree angle, my 45 is here, and here you go. All right, a 2-inch half square triangle. Put that right there on the yellow so you can see it. Okay, I'll do it again. My primary line here is the center is on the 45. Secondary is that I have 2 inches. Then I have material past my 2-inch mark, which I do. Cut 2 sides. Now I line up my 2 inches to get my final sides. I have 90 here, 45 there, and right on, cut the final 2 sides. There we go. All right, I have those are lined up. All right, these form an inverted flying goose. Okay, now before I go on, I'm gonna cut these. I'm not gonna measure to be precise. I'm just measuring so I have enough to square up the block. And since this point looks like my furthest point, let's say if I go out 3 inches, that should give me enough to square it up. So from the furthest left-hand point, I'm going to measure 3 inches. Let's flip it over so I have it the right way. 1, 2, 3. Again, not doing it to be precise, but just so that I have a starting point and I can use the extra material that I have laying to the left here that I know is not going to go into the block, but I don't want to be wasteful either. I'm going to sew those together. Sew a strip on this side and sew a strip on this side. So I shall be back. Alright, it's coming together. So I have both sides of my center square sewed on, and my top, I sewed my 2 half square triangles together and then sewed a little bit on each end. And I'm just going to cut everything off. Now again, I'm not being real precise. I'll have to square this block up either way. Here is our pineapple. Okay, now it's time to sew strips together. And one thing I want to talk about real quick, and I thought about this and I thought about it off camera, so I will talk about it now. You can see right here that the yellow square for the body of the pineapple is inside of the half hexi. And it is okay. And here's why. Because when we sew the half hexi, it's actually going to shrink. It's not going to be, the point that we see is not going to be as wide as we see now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark, let me pull this down so everybody can see. I'm going to mark on my square with the half hexi 1/4 of an inch onto the half hexi. Alright, so I'm going to put a mark right here. And this is how high on this block my seam allowance should come up. So just imagine these two together. That is where they are going to join, not out here. So I'm going to put this block together. Let's go this way. And what I want to do is, here's my mark. and I want to put it so that that mark, where that mark hits my background, is on the corner of the yellow, so that those two, once I take this 1/4 inch seam allowance, will line up. So let me pin this and I'll show you on the other one. Okay, here's my blue mark, and I'll line it up, and where that blue mark hits, I want to make sure that space right there hits exactly on the seam. And if it doesn't, I have a little bit of play in there, but not too much. And those are the 2 points on this strip that I want to make sure line up. Okay, those 2 points right there need to line up. If not, I could be a little bit crooked, or I could be off center once I take that seam allowance. So let me sew this really quick, and I'll show you guys what I mean. Now, I'm not lining up these edges. I didn't cut these really firm. My point of interest on these 2 strips is this point where I have my pin. So I'm just gonna lay this down and start sewing. I don't anticipate these lining up exactly, and that's okay, because we're going to square up the block the same with the other side. Okay, that is all nice and ironed now. This one turned out pretty good. This one's a little bit off. I'm not too worried about it. Maybe 1/8 of an inch off. Again, we're not worrying about the edges because we'll square those up when we're finished. So I'm going to do the same thing on the second half. So again, there's my mark, and I want that to be on the horizontal body of the pineapple. Straighten everything out, pin it. And again, these are the 2 points that we're worried about that line up. I'm not worried about what is happening on the end of the block right now. Alright, now put this one on and this one. So for this one, I'm gonna just eyeball it. I want it about even, or as close as to even as I can eyeball it. Looks about good. I'm just gonna flip it over, pin it, and again, not worrying about the edges because the edges will be squared up. And if it's a little bit off, I'm not worried about it. Pineapples are not perfect. They are not all shaped exactly the same. Some of them, their roughage goes in different directions, so that'll be my reasoning. Okay. Alright, one last seam and our pineapple is complete. So again, these are the 2 seams that I'm worried about, not worried about the edge. And these I should actually be able to nest together, yes. So it's funny, we talk about mistakes, and one bad habit I had to get over is pointing out my own mistakes to other people. And it's one of those things we just are so adamant about pointing out a mistake before somebody else sees it. 99% of the people aren't going to see it. They're going to see a beautiful handmade piece and just leave it at that. They will never know unless you tell them. We are our own worst critics, and we need to stop pointing out our errors to other people. Okay, that's my good news for the day. Alright, here it is. The half Hexi pineapple. I think that looks pretty damn good. I do say so myself. I'm not going to point out to the errors because if you followed along, you know exactly where they are. Alright, so now to square up the block. This part always gets me. I always have a hard time because I know where I would want it to square out, but sometimes it just doesn't want to square up that way. So I know that this is a straight line. And I'm a little short here at 3 inches, so I'm going to pull it back, and at 2.5 inches, 1, 2.5, I can have a straight line. Let's see what I got here. Alright, I'm covered there. Flip it over. So 2.5 inches if my vertical line is straight, and it is straight. So go back to 2.5 inches. Gonna get rid of that dog ear up there just because I don't want that to drive me nuts. Three quarters, 3/4, 3/4. All right. Our finished block ended up being, let's go down here, 9.5 by 11.5. So let's make a little note in here. 9.5 by 11.5. Okay, so I think that for today, that is pretty awesome. To go from here to here in about 30 minutes is a pretty good day. So please take the time to create something that you designed today. Do a little freestyling. If you enjoyed this video, press and steam the subscribe button. And this is Kreampuff. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.